starting, a couple of house rules and the agenda. So the host will enable your microphones for panelists, and this is for the panelists. The video will be on only for keynote speakers, and panelists. Everyone else, please keep your video off and not overuse the streaming connection. The chat will not be used for the public. The raise hand feature will not be used as well. Participants' questions are allowed only via the corresponding Q&A tool. Panelists may provide answers directly via tool, and the moderator will select the number of questions and will ask for the relevant answers to the appropriate panelists. Anyway, we do engage in giving you an answer after the conference. So, and now briefly the agenda. After my short welcome, I will hand over to Christian Buchel for a welcome and an introductory speech. And after that, Henning Twittler, whom is the head of policy at E.DSO, will moderate the intervention. There has been a slight variation to this agenda because, unfortunately, we had a very light injury that prevented the foreseen moderator to take part in this conference. We wish him a very good and rapid way to come back to us, and after this, enjoy your seminar, and may I ask Christian Buchel to welcome the participants and to give his introductory speech. Christian, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great pleasure. Welcome all of you, and many thanks, really deep, and many thanks for attending this event, especially those around this web who will bring in their testimony and panel discussions, their experiences. So let me open maybe this webinar with, I would say, a kind of provocative question. Yeah. Do you think that at the end, DSOs, as we are regulated, we are neutral platforms? The question is, do we have clients? Do we have customers? Because of unbundling in Europe, when you look back 10 years ago or maybe more now, the answer to this question was not that clear. But today we see, I would say, even more important than the regulation, when you look energy transition, when you look at technology, when you look smart meters rollout in Europe, when you look the release power of data, energy data provided, in fact, provides the answer to my question. Yes, DSOs do have clients. DSOs do have customers. By the way, I guess there are suppliers and service providers around this web. Suppliers and service providers are part of these clients. So definitely, yes. We do have customers to which we provide, I would say, at least 3 services. The first one is continuity of and quality of supply. Deliver, secondly, these clients with secured and transparent data. And third, connect them to the electric system, whether they are consumers, generators, or sometimes, and more, both. E.DSO had a strong will to work on customer topics. Being at the service of a consumer is indeed at the core of our mission, the core of our discussions, the core of our different, I would say, governance meetings we have within E.DSO. As I said, connecting customers to the network and ensuring a continuity and quality of supply is really our daily work. Yeah? It was true in the past, it's still true, and it's sometimes very challenging work. Yes, I was because it was particularly true when we look what happened while the COVID crisis. We ensured that lights stayed on and no one was left behind. We were used in the past to tackle unfortunately, often climatic crises, wind, fires. I think I can assess here on behalf of all the DSOs in Europe, our members, but generally speaking, all DSOs in Europe, that we handled well this unexpected and very severe sanitary crisis. Our investments are driven to successfully deliver these day tasks. Yes, we invest, globally speaking, 27 billion annually for grid investment. Remind that E.DSO members are serving more than, it's written here on this slide, 350 million citizens in Europe. But moreover, bringing the customer into the energy transition as a strong and active actor is not only the result of policies, of European policies, of regulation, of whatever, but also the positive outcomes of technological progresses. And I would say even of societal evolutions, yes, both neutrality and digitalization of the DSOs accelerate this customer empowerment. In a nutshell, what is our role along with the customer and prosumer? It is clearly to bring through technology, through proximity, with neutrality and transparency, the possibility to all actors to come into the energy system, and especially the consumer. So this is the last slide. If you can back to the second slide. Yes, this was the first one. So yeah, thank you very much. So indeed, achieving this energy and ecological transition calls for a more customer-centric approach. Decarbonization objectives and the increasing share of decentralized energy generation means moving from a top-down system to a multi-directional, I often say, to a horizontal one. Suppliers and energy service providers are customers, are clients, as I said as an introduction, but also local authorities, because local authorities are in the heart of the energy transition. We can do nothing if it's not driven, and I would say in accordance with the local authorities and the territories, but also businesses are customers and households also. Customer alone or collectively through communities, which is more and more a matter of fact in most countries in Europe, are now active as acting as active players in the system. These smart consumers adapt their consumption to limit CO2 emission. It is cultural, but it's also through I would say technology levers, and they can locally generate, they can provide more and more flexibility, which is a huge transformation for the near coming years. The whole system of decarbonization starts really on consumer, or I should say on citizen. And DSOs, we are local, yes, whatever the size of our companies are, we are acting very local. Yes, our staff is on the field, and so we are committed to make consumer expectation or citizens' expectation a reality. At least through three levels. The first one is facilitate and enable market players' action to meet consumer expectation and needs. So this is our role of market enabler, as we often say. Second is accompanying their projects, energy communities, more and more EV charging. Yes, EV charging is becoming, we hope all, and it's one of our proposals we made recently for recovery, to develop mobility which is more in agreement with the climate goals. So accompanying their project, second level. And the third one is using digitalization and data as the main levers to reinforce the consumer. If the consumer, if the citizen has a clear, transparent, confident access to its own data and can choose to bring this data to whoever he is available to bring solutions, a tailored solution for him, it's really a breakthrough in the power for the power of the consumer. Look, during the COVID-19 crisis, yes, we had as DSOs, a lot of you around this webinar are aware of. We had, Roberto, every 2 weeks webinars to exchange our experiences,
yes,
how we handle properly the question of protecting our staff, but protecting the consumer while keeping the lights on. And so during this COVID crisis, we have seen how important digital solutions are, how it was absolutely key, yes? The digital breakthrough a lot of our members within E.DSO have made 3-4 years ago, while still transforming and digitalization our companies, was absolutely key to keep on the lights during this COVID crisis. So our E.DSO brochure, we are very proud to present it today with all the very concrete examples and solutions. Is some kind of it's good to hold this webinar beginning of July, because we have no between crisis. We're still in the crisis, but we prepare the future of Europe. And speaking about the consumer, the prosumer, or generally speaking, the citizen, it's the right moment to do it. So we hope collectively within E.DSO that this brochure will bring a vision and can contribute to the recovery. Some of these solutions will be presented later on, so I don't deep in the now. So we can, the last slide, third one. Yes, thank you very much. So our next steps will be now to contribute to both European recovery and achieving Green Deal objectives, because we have the recovery plan in September normally in Europe, and we have the agenda, you know, all the agenda of the Green Deal. We will doing it while keeping customer citizen at the center. This is really not only a commitment, it's a way of thinking of E.DSO members, and easing innovative market players action. In that sense, we delivered Commissioner Simpson, it was a few days ago, a concrete proposal for coming from the DSO industry in Europe for the recovery. We highlighted the DSO's investment. I have already mentioned 27 billion a year. It's not only investment in, I would say, in copper or in transformers, yes, is investing in IT, in data handling, is investing in skills. So we highlighted these investments, which are key for the recovery. And our proposal around storage and flexibilities, we have four different topics in our proposal for the recovery. The first one is around storage and flexibilities. Huge possibilities are really available for the energy system and to empower the consumer. The second one is electric mobility. It's also directly linked to the customer. The third one is European sovereignty of our supply chain. We have seen how important it is for Europe, globally speaking. And last but not least is around IT, data, cybersecurity. And this is also a topic which is deeply linked to a customer / citizen. So these four proposals for the expected recovery, we have built it also to to release added value to the local authorities, the territory, as I would say, and globally the local stakeholders. As DSOs collectively under E.DSO's banner, we are engaged side by side with all those who want to accelerate now ecological transition. We will achieve it putting citizens. We can only achieve it by putting citizens at the center and considering them as a main driver of the coming transformation. So thanks, and I give the floor to my colleague from Lithuania.
Yes, thank you very much, Christian, for these opening remarks. We have one more opening speech by Kęstutis Kupšys, who's the Vice President of the Alliance of Lithuanian Consumer Organizations. And he's been joining the consumer movement already in 2011. So it's almost been 10 years. Yeah, Mr. Kupšys holds, he graduated from Vilnius University with a degree in economic cybernetics and systemic analysis of the economy, but he also supplemented his studies further with degrees in financial markets and business administration in Germany, University of Eichstätt, as well as in philosophy at Vilnius University. And we're very happy to have you here to give us, in your opening remarks, the customer perspective. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and also to add a little bit, our organization is uniting some smaller consumer organizations in Lithuania, and we are in turn part of the larger European umbrella of consumer organizations that you are probably well aware of. It's called BEUC, or in German it's usually referred to as BOIC. So the European Consumer Organization is our umbrella organization, and we represent several national organizations under our umbrella. So I can only reiterate what was previously said, that it's indeed DSOs serve a very crucial key role in the energy system of today. And yeah, for consumers, it's usually a face we would refer, because sometimes I see in some of the papers, DSOs describe themselves as being a backbone to the system, but for a typical consumer, it's not a backbone, it's really a face to electricity and a face to every household in Europe. So usually it makes really a very big, important first step to every consumer to think about how he uses electricity from what he experienced with his or her interaction to DSO. And that's why we want to emphasize that there's really a need to nurture and to deepen the culture of joint understanding between consumers and DSOs, because like there are quite important challenges ahead, and the better consumers understand what is the role of DSOs, and the better DSOs get into the minds of consumers, the better the end result shall be. So I really welcome the welcoming culture that is clearly visible in the paper the E.DSO will present today later during this webinar. And we also see that DSOs are in reality a really helping hand, or at least they should be, because they are the natural partner to engage and to empower the consumer. So you can simply choose and change your electricity supplier, but you cannot change your DSO. So it's for a consumer, it's like a fixed thing that no matter what you think of a certain DSO, or about a price or a service, you are stuck with that partner, and it adds another, let's say, another aspect, another factor we should remember all the time when we discuss the role of DSO in consumer household electricity topics. So if DSO decides that you have a good access, then you have a good access, or if you have access at all. So it's not simply access to the electricity, which is kind of a basic service, but access to new products and access to new opportunities that are now spreading across Europe because of this energy transition. So that's why we also call for a strong regulation and good regulation, good strong regulators in member states and at the European level, because with this we can ensure that there's efficient growth and correct pricing, and quality of services is rising, and more innovative services are offered, and so on. Distribution tariffs, for example, are really sometimes quite a burden for a consumer, and the data from ACER CR market monitoring report back in 2019 shows that in some European countries it's even up to 40 or 40+%. So it should also be taken into account. Data protection concerns. It's again a very important concern for consumers, and also an important tool, because we all talk about how access to data for consumer can make him engaged, how it can empower him to take action, to use some innovative services, but like it should be done in a very proper and GDPR compliant way. Otherwise, it will not deliver what is expected. We cannot risk losing trust of consumers if we want them to play a very active role. And also, I want to emphasize there's a certain aspect of this forthcoming energy transition that, you know, we all talk about the redistributive effects, about how to make energy poverty to be tackled during this energy transition. And we should not forget about the most vulnerable ones. And it's important to remember that not all consumers are equal in this regard because of their different past experience and different literacy, different financial literacy, energy literacy, one could say. We have different statuses. We have tenants, we have owners, we have vulnerable consumers with specific needs, and we have digitally, unfortunately, illiterate consumers. So proper care should be taken of all those groups. And if I may continue to the next slide, please. So in order to elaborate a little bit more on what I've said already, like we had this experience from Clear 2.0 project at BEUC. In the context of that project, consumer organizations have been providing consumers with behavioral tips, how to correctly use, let's say, electric cooking plates, or how to optimize the use of appliances via eco modes and similar things. Like sometimes it's even about replacement of certain equipment, and for that, consumer needs a personalized return on investment scenarios to be provided. That's why we see that DSOs can play a very important role providing that advice and providing the access to data for a consumer, because what's important, that one's total consumption is not enough. And instant consumption is also sometimes not so much helpful, because in the end, what the consumer has to know indeed is what is the consumption of the certain appliance, and what are the costs to run that appliance, and what are the replacement costs. So there's much more things to discuss and to advise on if we want consumers to engage in a really active way. I'm simply, like, I'm focusing on a very basic things. It's not about the modern things, the demand response schemes, for example, but just, even if you are not engaged in those types of schemes, you want to diminish your electricity consumption. So for that you need proper data, and simply having some data is not enough. It has to be interpreted, and DSOs may have their role in this process, helping consumers to understand it. Of course, it goes to the need for easy to understand bills, which is another big concern of consumers, but that probably requires another webinar, an hour or two to talk, if we focus only on bills. So a very big thing is how in reality consumers are engaging in those very important goals of today. Like, we want decarbonization, we want climate neutrality, and we want energy efficiency, more prosumption, more renewable sources. And remember that in the context of a bigger, let's say, program of renovation wave, we will talk a lot about the electricity, about the importance of electricity, about the electrification of a household. So this leads this need for ongoing and quite far-reaching electrification of buildings. We will turn to using heat pumps, to using solar power, using electric vehicles. Electric vehicle charging is a very important point, which is, of course, a big concern for DSOs in every country. So with these big things coming to our households in the next, let's say, 5 or 10 years, DSOs should be prepared to assist consumers, and consumers should be given really a good advice on every of those topics, and the behavioral aspects should be taken into account. I think for my introduction, for the introduction, like for this introductory overview, that is already more than enough. I've raised probably many issues. So let me pass the floor to the next speaker, and I will come back to those things during the webinar if need be.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kupchis, for these introductory words and for setting the scene. As you said, I think you have really mentioned a lot of important and very interesting aspects here that are relevant for the discussion, ranging from access to data, but also privacy aspects, the need for easy to understand bills, so customer awareness, but also the welcoming culture for prosumers. So thanks a lot for that. Indeed, I would then pass on the word to Santiago Gallego, who is the European Affairs Manager at the Department of Networks Global Regulation at E.DSO, which is the distributing company of Iberdrola. And Santiago has been a very active member in the consumer working group at E.DSO within the policy committee that has prepared the report, and he will give us a presentation of the main content of the paper that we have indeed released. So thank you, Santiago, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Henning. Good morning, everybody. My name, as Henning said, is Santiago Gallego, and I work as Global Regulation Manager for IDE. That it's the distribution system operator of Iberdrola Group. It's a big pleasure for me to be here with you today and present this E.DSO brochure, which has a very appealing title, Lead the Transition and Serve the Customers. Next slide, please. In the next 20 minutes, I will try to guide you through the most important aspects of this paper. I hope you find interest in the 12 use cases we have selected among our member companies and that I will present in after a brief introduction. All of these cases are customer-centric, and they represent the work done by our members' experts on digitalization, smart grids, and customer trends also to reach what we call a customer engagement by design. Next, please. No, this one. Yeah. I would like to start by saying thanks to all E.DSO Secretariat for the support and organization of this event, and of course, to all E.DSO colleagues that have collaborated in this report, and especially to the working group leader, Rika Hilisa Oja from Karuna. You can see their names and the companies they represent on this slide, but also find them in the brochure. Next slide, please. You may be thinking why E.DSO has decided to set a work stream with the focus on customer needs and then write our findings in a public document. So, connecting more than 260 million customers in Europe, E.DSO gathers the leading European DSOs for electricity. And one of our main missions is to cooperate to ensure the security of supply for these customers and enable their active participation into the energy system. We can't ignore that more than ever, this is a changing world and these are changing times. Challenging times, I would say. Everyday life has moved from a state of stability to one of rapid change. Customers are increasingly used to real-time servicing and interactions, even more with the current COVID crisis. And they become more demanding on quality, simplicity, transparency, and choice. So I really believe this paper is timely. What I'm saying is that we really understand the role of DSO is to become more and more service-oriented, and then the network itself will turn into a service platform, allowing DSOs and service providers to better serve their customers. We are about to see several experiences in this field. In this context, the relationship between DSOs and customers becomes closer, the interaction more frequent, and the need to develop broader awareness and take customers' priorities into account is really compelling. In other words, full customer engagement is the key to fulfill the energy transition and realize its socio-economic value. This is the main driver for this paper. Regarding the chosen methodology for this paper, we extracted 12 concrete examples of how DSOs address customer needs. We focus on the different ways DSOs interact with their customers, and especially with the help of new technologies, changing customer preferences and expectations. The experiences we have included all are innovative and have the purpose of improving the customer-DSO relationship. Finally, at the end of my presentation, I will share with the audience 6 key messages extracted from our work. Next, please. Now that you are aware of the overview, let's begin with the cases. We have grouped them in 5 categories. The first one, arranging a grid connection. The second one, providing relevant data, for example, consumption data through smart metering. The third one, DSO customer communication, for example, in case of disturbances or outages. Then facilitating data exchanges with third parties. And the last one, enabling new and innovative services and helping customers to become active and reap the benefits of the energy transition. I hope you can find interesting information from the different examples I'm about to present. Next, please. So let's get started with the first group of cases, arranging a grid connection. You know, the grid connection process is one of the main customer processes in distribution. It is also often the very first contact from the customer with the company. This is significant because Customers always make us know their need for simplicity and clear instant answers. Therefore, it is extremely important to offer them quick and easy services through digital channels. The first impression is always the best impression. So 3 following use cases show how DSOs try to make a good start with their customers. The first case that you can see here is providing a grid connection, and it's from Caruna, Finland. The first thing to consider is which customer need is addressed. The customer is planning to build a new house and has many different stakeholders to deal with. So the grid connection is essential for the construction process, and the customer wants an easy way to order a grid connection and follow the building process. And then, which solution is proposed? Caruna collects information of granted constructions from municipalities and permits, and that is the more important thing. They contact the future customer with a welcoming letter, even before their own contact to Caruna. The welcome package includes information of Caruna's digital services and directs them to the online services, including offering a grid connection. Next, please. To illustrate this, you can see a picture of the whole process. As a result, the service is fully digitalized. It allows customers to do digital contract signing and payment. The customer can always follow the grid connection process online and also receives messages on every step of the process. Of course, there always will be the possibility of a customer service dispatch on the telephone. Next, please. In the same way, the case provided from E.DSO, Lithuania, with the title Connecting Prosumers with Remote Generation, offers some different situation in which the customer has several points of consumption, with one of them having excess generation, does not have a possibility to install a renewable generation system, or does not want to fully commit to installing renewables at their premises. This is important because regular prosumers, as was said some minutes ago, can virtually split their generation capabilities, and this is a need from them, and link them with their other points of consumption. This way, all energy supplied to the grid during a month is split proportionally according to a previously attributed generation power in kilowatts to each point of consumption. Next, please. Another case from E.DSO, the same company, automatic new connection application, one-click story. This is a one-click story is a nice slogan. Typically, people apply for new electricity connections once or twice in their lifetime. And usually, as I said before, as a matter of fact, they tend to get frustrated by the technical nature of the process, mainly because they need to understand the terminology, the difficult terminology, I would say, and network requirements. Unfortunately, sometimes it seems like we speak different languages. One-click story is an online application solution developed for new electricity and gas connections, in which the whole application process is automated, so customers can fill in the application by using a map. You can see the maps in the slide with network data and checking the connection point on the map. And this is the reason why it's called one-click story. You can see in the maps that you have the geographical and network information, and that's the look the customers can see. Next, please. The next category is providing relevant data. For example, I said consumption data from smart metering, but with the help of new digital technologies. A remarkable case from ENTRNCE, France, called ENTRNCE Amicoté, that use a client portal, and the smartphone app is now on the screen. It should be emphasized that ENTRNCE has been offering a client portal to customers for a long time. Since the company has been rolling out Link smart meters, the services have grown to meet the needs of the customers. The goal is to improve the link between the company and individual clients. So which solution is ENTRNCE proposing? The client portal is accessible online, and the phone app is free and available on Apple Store and Google Play and so on. ENTRNCE has developed many new services through these digital solutions. The client portal and the app are already working, A good example of this is that 1,200,000 client accounts have already been created and the app is downloaded approximately 30,000 times per week. The client account interface also evolved and allows a client to gather all its connection points under the same client account. As an illustration of proactivity during COVID-19 crisis, ENTRNCE also developed voice bots and call bots to facilitate communication channels. It transforms incoming calls into emails and allows customer advisors to call them back the day after. This is a very proactive approach. Next, please. The next case is the Cliente project from my company, for IDE Spain. And I would say that more than a set of features, the Cliente project implies an extraordinary cultural change, improving customer satisfaction to become customer-centric. And which customer need is addressed? In first place, the project aims to provide better information that can improve customer satisfaction. The motto is from taking care of the network to taking care of the customers connected to the network. With the help of a mobile app that you can see at the right side of the slide, new services for the customer have been implemented. For example, instant access to their smart meter, information about the connection. A customer also receives specific information about outages and expected time to restore power. This leads me to a relevant issue. The second generation of smart meters is being planned with a more customer-focused approach, trying to accommodate their needs, customer needs. Next, please. As said, a more proactive approach, as the previous case also, has been developed when operating the grid and improving the communication with customers and taking advantage of the smart network and meters. It is important to say here that it does not exist an obligation from the regulation, just true conviction on the purpose of getting the customer satisfied and in contact with us. For this reason, new roles for dispatching center have been established. They use data analysis to know the impact of the network operation on customers, with special attention to repetitive incidents, and also to proactively advise customers with special needs in terms of quality of supply. Consequently, all outages in progress are monitored in real time, also taking into account if there are sensitive customers. The information is available to customers through the customer service channels, telephone, web. You can see the web at the bottom right picture, mobile apps. For this reason, there are initiatives like, for example, the Voice of Customer, which focus on groups and surveys to these groups, or also Close the Loop, that addresses their needs, customer needs, to improve the whole process. I would like to direct your attention to the picture at the lowest part of the slide. It's a good example. You can see how sending proactively emails to customers has a direct impact on their response, increasing the activity through the different channels. You have a baseline for use of the webs, but then if you send a message, then they start to react and get the benefits of these digital advantages. In conclusion, the aim of all the previous practices is to create value for the customers and therefore to improve the overall satisfaction. The Cliente project is constantly evolving in order to meet these objectives. Next, please. The next case for customer service from JSC, Sadales Pickles, Latvia, belongs to the same category as the previous. Which customer need is addressed in this case? Clients expect that the company will provide a set of functionalities to the web service, like continuous access to power, proactive communications, cooperation and support, 24/7 service, etc. Which solution is proposed then? To make more efficient the services provided for the clients, as well as to offer a wider spectrum of services offered 24/7 and reduce the necessity for client to address the company in person, new e-platform solutions have been introduced. They include the digital map you can see at the right side, which includes information about grid outages, reconstruction of power lines, and cleaning of routes and protection zone. Next, please. Continuing with the same company and another successful implementation, the next case is for the automatic data exchange and customer service processes with electricity traders. What is it about? After the opening of the electricity market to households in Latvia, the need for clients and electricity traders to exchange information emerged. So the proposed solution was to establish a system providing the exchange of market messages, namely the change of a user in the connection point, connection implementation, termination of the connection, and other messages. It also provides the traders with information necessary for billing, for example, consumption data and calculation on the provided services. The slogan for this online service is fast, easy way. In a nutshell, it provides an easy access for each customer to their personal consumption data, as well as other data regarding connections and services offered. Next, please. The next case, Data Connect, is again from E.DSO, one of the companies that you can see that is being more active in improving the customer satisfaction. And this platform collects the customer's consent to share the consumption data to the service providers. They agree to. And E.DSO then transfer the data to them. Consequently, the grid solution developed by E.DSO is a French green button, as assessed by the National Regulatory Authority. It changes the regular process of data sharing. With this green button, the customer consents a service provider to access the data. The service provider could then access the customer data as long as the consent is given, is kept. So the consumer can revoke it at any time on the client space. Next, please. For the last block of cases, enabling new and innovative services, customers to become active and reap the benefits of the energy transition, we have 4 more interesting experiences. The first one, marketplace platform, is from Caruna. And the main idea of marketplace is to connect customers with service providers and deliver energy solutions. Caruna enables the platform for customer and service provider interactions, but doesn't engage in selling the services. That's a quite important remark. Next, please. As a solution, the marketplace platform enables the customer and the service provider to meet. The first available service is solar panel optimization and ordering, but other service offerings will develop and are focused on electric vehicle charging, electrician services, electricity contracting services, cooling and heating solution, etc. Next, please. Another kind of platform is ENTRNCE, an independent trading platform developed by Alliander from the Netherlands. In the new sustainable energy system, more and more companies and consumers want not only to use electricity, but also to sell their own generated energy to third parties. ENTRNCE makes trading electricity easier and cheaper. The electricity goes directly from producer to buyer. The system makes energy transaction possible between all electricity connections, large and small. And energy trading markets in the Netherlands can supply electricity from connection to connection via automatic transaction. You can find more details about ENTRNCE in the brochure. Next, please. Now let's consider another experience shared by Alliander. It's the customer interaction field trial, energy co-ploppers, in English, energy front runners. This project has been developed for 2 years households in a specific Dutch municipality to see whether matching supply and demand could work through a flex market. From the experience, an important outcome can be extracted. The local flex market for households contributes to the optimization of the grid and has added value for all parties. It is closely related with the development of flexibility markets, including customer perspective. Next, please. In the project, the flexibility came from smart appliances that were controlled automatically by a smart energy system. The smart energy system predicted supply and demand for electricity and regulated it using these smart appliances. Definitely, you can find a more detailed explanation in the brochure as well. Next, please. And the last but not the least important case comes also from the Netherlands, in particular from the company ENTRNCE, and has the title Smart and Fair Network Tariffs. We are dealing here with a pilot project with a new smart network tariff which offers an incentive for customers. The smart implementation starts from the idea that customers want network tariffs that are as low and fair as possible. That's clear. Furthermore, they do not want tariffs that limit their freedom to act as they need. More importantly, ENTRNCE proposes a future network tariff that is a subscription-based bandwidth model, which in this model, the customer subscribes to a symmetrical kilowatt band, for example, as it is shown in the picture. In the next slide, please. Yeah, you can see the picture. The subscription allows the customer to freely use his kilowatt band for a fixed monthly fee. Consumption or feeding outside the subscribed band is still possible, but will be charged separately as shows the red line. As you can see, with this network tariff, the customer uses the network more efficiently, driving costs down, which at the end of the day benefits all customers. Finally, we have reached the end of the use cases, and now I would like to move on to the last part of the presentation. Thank you. I would like to leave you with the 6 key messages we have learned from the different use cases. First, citizens play a central role in the energy transition that is proactively facilitated by us, the DSOs. Consequently, they are the direct link between DSOs are the direct link between our customers and the wider energy system. Secondly, DSOs are moving away from the notion of connecting points, adopting a more customer-centric approach. DSOs can be much more than mere providers of the physical infrastructure, providing new and innovative bridge services to their customers. Third, DSOs implement new technologies and offer innovative services to their customers. These all examples that we have seen are good experiences that can be said about this point. Smart meters gather crucial data that form the basis for increased customer engagement. Next, please. Fourth, digitalization of communication between DSOs and customer is key. The services that have been already implemented have obtained excellent acceptance from customers. Fifth, a customer-centric energy transition requires a clear regulatory framework that accounts for dynamic developments and innovation. And sixth, a customer-centric energy transition facilitated by DSOs enables a bottom-up construction, as we heard at the beginning, through optimized energy systems of different sizes and organizations. It requires the proactive actions by the DSOs to identify customer needs while limiting complexity and increasing acceptance through participation. Next. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Next slide, please. My aim is to encourage you to read the brochure and find more details of each of the use cases. If you have a specific question of one of the cases, you can always reach us through E.DSO and we'll be happy to answer it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Santiago, for providing such a comprehensive overview of what is to be found in the paper, which is quite a challenge to do it within 20 minutes, but you did very well, so thanks for that. I can also only encourage all of you, you can find the paper on our website. And also I have taken note that there are a few questions. However, with a look at the time, I suggest that we move on to the 3 testimonials first. And that after the 3 testimonials, we have a Q&A round where we can address some of these questions on data interoperability, but also the kind of regulation that we actually need to enable these customer services. So maybe something to already give it a thought, maybe also for you, Santiago, and then later on we will get back to that. And for now, I would like to move on and give the word to Holger Schneidewind, who is an energy lawyer and policy advisor. He has a decade of experience in energy policy with a particular interest in prosumer subjects. He works as a consultant for the Consumer Association of North Rhine-Westphalia, but he's especially here in a private capacity, as he's also been authoring many papers and articles on this issue. As I said, he's a lawyer by profession, holding a law degree from the University of Münster and also the second state examination in Germany. Holger, thanks for being here, and the floor is yours. And the floor is yours for 7 minutes indeed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Let's start quickly because 7 minutes is not a lot. Regarding the structure of my presentation, it will be 3 slides. The first will just present some aspects regarding the relevant energy political landscape that might be important. The second slide will be some current examples of DSO consumer relationship or subjects or issues. And then there will be some ideas on the third slide with some conclusions, some ideas. It is all about inciting the discussion for today or later on. That will take time. There are a lot of links in the presentation because it's very reduced content, and the links and articles are more information. Let's go to the first slide, please. It became clear in Santiago's presentation, of course, DSOs are very important players naturally because all prosumer assets are connected to the distribution grid, no doubt. But I underlined that some DSOs might be enabled of energy transition. Not all of them will be. I want to strengthen the importance of the clean energy package that is already adopted, that is done. And this is a crucial step for prosumers, especially the fundamental rights that are in the Internal Market Directive, Active Consumers, Article 15, and then it's 21, Renewable Energy Directive, Renewable Self-Consumers. They have to be, as all the other provisions, implemented now by the member states. So it will be crucial as there is left a lot of space to member states how to implement these as I call them, fundamental rights. But that is very important, clean energy package. And then what's going on, we all know that right now there will be a reorganization of grid management and the roles. Right now it's TSOs, DSO, that will change. DSOs, of course, will have to take over more responsibilities, more power. And we all know that this is officially a friendly game, but we all know too that it is quite a heavy lobby fight. It is about power, it is about stakes, and of course, in the end, it is about money. That's not a surprise. I am from Germany, and the German situation might be impacting the EU quite a lot, for the good or the bad. In Germany, we don't have one DSO, we have almost 900 DSOs, and some of them are quite innovative, but some are not. Some are big, some are small, some are public owned, and some are private. So we can't talk about the DSOs. It is a very diverse landscape of DSOs, and we have to keep that in mind, and that is probably a good thing on the one hand, but it might be a showstopper on the other hand. And then what I call carrot or stick. When we look at prosumers, there are 2 main instruments regarding the future regulatory framework for all kind of prosumers. It can be a carrot, like a voluntary participation, or it can be rather mandatory, and that's the stick. So we have some examples from reality right now, because prosumers right now want to do a lot of things. It's not pilot project, it's reality, and that is interesting. We have as the first example and a crucial example, the smart meter rollout. As we have rollouts everywhere in Europe, it seems that, like everywhere, the German institutions are betting on a mandatory approach, and well, there's all in this article. And then we have the local flexibility markets for redispatch. That is Article 32. And the German government, joined by DSO, TSOs, and others, just rejected, very silently, just rejected to use this instrument, though this should be the principle. At least that's what was told by the Commission. And for me, that was a little bit too silent, and it was a surprisingly joint action by TSOs, DSOs, BNetzA, and the ministry. The next two things, it is dispatchable loads, like heat pumps, EVs, or the same, it's the renewable self-consumer, PV and storage. These are really core actions for prosumers. And in Germany, we are on our way to regulate this. And regarding dispatchable load, there is the question whether prosumers have to participate voluntarily or whether it's mandatory. And it looks like that the ministry and other players are going for the mandatory way. And the Consumer Association, VTBV, they ask for dynamic network tariffs, so it's voluntary. This is crucial, a crucial subject. And the same with PV prosumers, with storage and some part of self-consumption and some injection into the grid. How to handle this? And it looks like our national regulatory authority, the BNetzA, is going for the stick again and tell prosumers you have to take part in direct marketing, what we call direct marketing, though that is way too expensive, and the smart meters are too expensive too. So we ask for why do we still use these standard load profiles even on prosumers? Shouldn't there be? It shouldn't be DSOs much more innovative and work on standard prosumer profiles. So we don't need expensive smart meters. And this is really reality. This is really decisive for prosumers in the future. And I'm a little bit concerned on what we are doing in Germany. Let's go to the next and the last section. So this is just a list of some ideas. First one is clear. Clean energy package is very important. And let's go a little bit back on TSO, DSOs, because we all know there is this struggle for prosumer assets, and I've been working on this for years now, and we always look at the results. We don't look at the marketing. This brochure is very interesting, and there are really nice pilot projects. But of course, we look at the results, and as we always call it, if prosumers are on the label, they must be in it too in the end. So, and we will have a look at that. What I think is really crucial regarding prosumer assets is that we need a really future-proof, transparent system of tariffs, fees, levies, and we need a fair allocation of benefits and costs by prosumers, because there might be benefits for the system, and of course there are costs and burdens too. And that is the challenge for all countries who bet on prosumers. And as I can see it, no country in the world has approved or found this future-proof system. And we work on that. It's not easy at all, and it must be a consistent system. This will be the challenge. And with the clean energy package, we're quite advanced. The Commission should look at the implementation of the clean energy package and not be distracted too much by the Green New Deal, because the clean energy package really is, from the prosumer perspective, the key regulatory framework so far. That's it from me for now, and looking forward to the other testimonials.
Thank you very much, Holger. Very interesting presentation. And again, we can get back to it in the Q&A section. Now I would like to hand over to Professor Linda Stech, who's a professor of environmental psychology at the University of Groningen, and she's studying factors influencing sustainable behavior, also energy use, effects and acceptability of strategies aimed at promoting sustainable behavior, and public perceptions of technology and system change. She's also a member of the Royal Netherlands Academy of Sciences and a lead author of the IPCC special report on 1.5 degrees Celsius and the AR6. So thank you very much, Professor Stech, for joining us here and providing the academic, the behavioral psychologist perspective on this very important topic.
Yes, thank you very much. Next slide, please. I will try to be quite fast in 7 minutes and focus on how to engage citizens in the energy transition, because that has a topic that many of you tapped on. So what motivates people to take part and to do the things that would make the system more sustainable? Next, please. So the first thing I want to emphasize is that there are many different types of motivations that drive sustainable energy behavior. And people are not only driven by self-interest. So in general, you can see that there are 4 major goals that people strive for in their life that motivate the decisions that they make. 2 of them make them indeed more focused on their self-interest. That's hedonic values. So people want a pleasurable life. They want to reduce effort. And the next one is egoistic values, and it means that people want to enhance their resources or secure their resources. It can be money, but also things like status. But this is not the only thing that drives our decisions. We are also concerned about the collective interest. So many people care about the well-being of others and are willing to engage in behavior that benefits others. But also many people value the environment and protecting the environment as such, and are motivated to act upon these values as well. And what we find in research is that the stronger people endorse egoistic and hedonic values, then less likely they are to act sustainably, although not all the time. Sometimes doing something good for your something that saves you money would also benefit the environment. For example, if you reduce your home energy use. But more generally, strong altruistic values and particularly strong biospheric values promote sustainable behavior. So the more people care about the environment, the more likely they are to act sustainably, including using renewables in a more flexible way, for example, over and again, even though this might be somewhat discomfortable or somewhat costly to them. Next, please. So this means also that given that these are 4 different types of motives that drive behavior, it also means that there are different ways to motivate people to contribute to a sustainable energy transition. So you not only need to target financial motivations, because there's a wider range of factors that you could consider. So what are the most common approaches currently being used to motivate people to play their role in the energy transition? Well, one very prominent one is information. The assumption being, if people would know, they would change their behavior and do the right thing. And that's what you saw in the presentations before as well. Inform people about the consequences of their behavior, about the financial benefits of engaging in certain behavior. And that helps people to take up their role in the energy transition. What we know from research is information is important if that is the main barrier for change. But oftentimes it's not the major barrier, not the main barrier. And providing information when people are not motivated to change is not very effective. So overall, information mostly enhances awareness, makes people more care about the issue, but it does not always translate into behavior when there are other major barriers for change. Another common strategy is focusing on extrinsic motivation, so mostly focusing on the self-interested motivations that I discussed before. The idea is if you make pro-environmental or sustainable actions more attractive, people will act accordingly. I will give you an example on whether this is the major route to consider in a minute. And next, I will focus more on the role of intrinsic motivation. And it means that people are motivated to act pro-environmentally, to act sustainably, because they care about doing so, because they value the environment, and because they think it's a meaningful thing to do. Next slide, please. So let's look at whether money drives our decisions. This is a field experiment that we conducted in the US to see whether we can encourage people to check their tire pressures. If your tires are properly inflated, you save gasoline, and that means you save money, but you also emit less CO2. And we wanted to know which of these messages would be most effective to promote people, or to encourage people to check their tire pressure. Should you emphasize the environmental benefits, the financial ones, or a control condition without any arguments? So think about it for a minute, maybe what you think would be most effective. Now, what we generally find, and what people also indicate, is that people think the financial appeal is most effective. Because it's very tangible. We know exactly what we can do with $1 saved or €1 saved. And it is something that people care about. What we found, this is the least effective. The most effective one was the environmental message. Why? Well, in case of the financial message, and this is true for many other sustainable behaviors as well, the financial benefits are not that big. So if you emphasize financial benefits, people engage in a cost-benefit consideration, and they think, well, I'll save a few bucks, but it's quite effortful as well. It's not worth the effort. Well, they do think that the very same behavior is more worth the effort if you emphasize the environmental benefits. Why is this the case? Well, that's because many people care about the environment, what I said before, and doing something good for the environment makes us feel good about ourselves. It gives us a pleasurable feeling because we do something meaningful. So many people are motivated to protect the environment because it makes them feel meaningful, and it elicits all kinds of positive feelings. So environmental considerations can be a more important motivator for change than financial. Of course, not always. If financial costs are really high, if there's major financial consequences involved, then you need to take care of that as well. Next slide, please. So what if people, I said many people care about the environment, and indeed that's what we find all across Europe. Many people quite strongly endorse environmental values, but what if people are not so much motivated themselves? How can you move them into the right direction? How can you encourage them to act pro-environmentally? Now, one way could be remind them of their past behavior. So what we find in research is people who strongly care about the environment with strong biospheric values have a relatively strong environmental self-identity, and that means that they see themselves as a person who acts pro-environmentally. And the more you do so, the more likely you are to act sustainably, because we are motivated to act in line with how we see ourselves. We are motivated to be consistent. But the environmental self-identity is also stronger when we remind, or when we consider that we acted pro-environmentally before in the past. So the more I engage in sustainable behavior before, the more I see myself as a sustainable person, the more likely I am to act sustainably. The other way around is also true. If I remind people about the many things they did not do in the past, then their environmental self-identity is weakened and they're less likely to act sustainably. And in many campaigns, we emphasize the many things that people do not do yet. And it would be more beneficial to emphasize, hey, you are the type of person who does these type of things because you acted sustainably in many times before in the past. And many people do act sustainably in many cases. So it would be important to emphasize this. And this is exactly what the Dutch government recently did in a campaign. It's Dutch, of course, but it reads like everyone does something. So it was emphasizing everyone does something to contribute to sustainability. Next, please. Another way, there are many more ways, but I only want to emphasize one more way to promote sustainable behavior. that is relevant for you and the role you play in the system as well. And that's corporate environmental sustainability. And that means that a company emphasizes its sustainable mission and also what type of policy they already implement to make this happen. Well, many of you are actively working on that, as we have shown here in the presentations. And what we find is that people are more likely to, not only more likely to act sustainably when they strongly endorse biospheric values, but also when they believe that the organization they are associated with is committed to corporate environmental sustainability. And this is true for employees, but also for customers, for example. So if a customer thinks you as an organization are strongly committed to reduce its environmental impact, they're also more motivated to act sustainably. And this is particularly the case when people do not strongly endorse biospheric values themselves. So those who are committed to the environmental issues already because of their values, they act sustainably anyway. But those with relatively weaker biospheric values, they are more motivated to act sustainably when they realize that a company they are associated with cares about the environment and strives to reduce their environmental impact. Last slide, please. So to summarize what I have been saying in main messages, many people are motivated to act sustainably because they care about the environment and are motivated to reduce their environmental impact. Costs are important, financial benefits and costs are very important, but oftentimes not decisive. So reducing costs is not the only way. There's other type of motivations that are also relevant to promote sustainable choices. It would be also relevant to emphasize the many things that people already do, because that makes them realize they are a sustainable person and to act sustainably over and again in the future. And of course, it's important to enable and facilitate sustainable action so that people are able to act upon the values they deem important in their lives. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Stech. Then we would move on with the final contribution in this testimonial section to Yvonne Ruweida, who's business strategist at Vattenfall E.DSO and the leader of the Swedish demo of the Coordinate project, which is a project that focuses on TSO, DSO, consumer coordination, basically cooperation. And she's going to tell us more about the Coordinate project and what they are doing there. So thanks a lot. And for 7 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Henning, and thank you to be able to make this testimonial. Next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Coordinate project and the Stockholm Flex project. Next slide. The Coordinate project is actually focused on solving issues for consumers and customers by enhancing the coordination between TSO, DSO, and consumer, and doing that in 3 countries. Next slide. The Stockholm Flex project is also a marketplace for flexibility services with the same goal, but it's only existing in the capital of Stockholm. It's going to launch next winter. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience of having this kind of marketplace for flexibility providers and what the learnings are. Next slide. So last winter, we demonstrated flexibility services for congestion management they had in the winter and on 3 demo sites. And all these 3 demo sites, they don't have actors who participate with system services today, because most of the system services in Sweden is from hydropower companies and also from big electric boilers. So flexibility services, system services are not actually used. So everyone participating is new in this, both the flexibility service providers and also the DSOs. Just push the button and there will be a table. So push, yes. So we had actually participating 12 flexibility providers on these markets with a total amount of 20 resources, and one was an aggregator with 340 houses. And The volume cleared was actually lower than expected because we had a very mild winter. The biggest cleared volume was in Uppland, and that was almost 3.3 gigawatt hours that was cleared for. Next slide. So what was the main barriers for the flexibility service providers? I would just want to say that you could divide them into the providers who can control often. For example, certain electric boilers, certain heating pumps, aggregators, and then also the ones who more act as a reserve. Certain industries, for example, water power actors who have reserve generators. And different flexibility service providers have different needs. So for example, some of them participating, they would want to have an API for bidding and clearing, but others, they would never want to work with an API because they would want to do it on a more manual way. So you really have to look at the actors and give them different kind of possibilities to be able to participate, not just have one manual or one size fit alls, because they have many different sizes. Some of them can only participate on a day ahead basis, but they are also important when it comes to congestion management, winter in Sweden. But others, they would prefer to provide flexibility closer to delivery hour. So here, market design issues are very important. I mean, if you really want to be able to open up for all different kind of actors to participate. Also, what we notice is that the knowledge among providers of steering equipment in how they could help their, for example, the industry or the housing company to work with their steering equipment to participate as flexibility service providers was very, very low. So here you have a gap. And we had a dialogue with the Energy Authority and also with providers on these issues. But I really think that helping the customers to participate is by making the providers of steering equipment more mature, because that would change a lot. So also standard for communications is important. We are working with that in the Coordinate project and in the Stockholm Flex project, because providing services, you don't want to meet different standards in different cities or different countries. So you want to have a standard. Next slide. The main barrier was the financial one. If you could go to the next slide. And for example, on the flexibility market, the variation of the DSO need is very much due to temperature. It's a very big difference which need you have if it's a mild winter or if it's a 10-year winter. And this, I think, is one of the main issues, how to be able to make a business case when you have this variation of the DSO need. Also, the flexibility of pricing, is it correct? Today, we use the cost for overlying grid, and it is very, very low. Also, looking at the business case, the demonstrations we have today, they are 1 year or they are 3 years. So it's too short time for certain actors to make an investment. So one of the solutions is to make it easier to make a business case by combining it with the MFRR. And in Sweden, we have a pilot, so you can participate next winter on the MFRR market in the Coordinate project, but also in Stockholm Flex if you have 1 megawatt aggregated. That's one way in making a better business case. Another is availability remuneration from the DSO. E.ON Energidistribution is testing that in Coordinate next winter, and Vattenfall Eldistribution is testing this also in Stockholm Flex next winter. So a certain kind of availability remuneration for flexibility services. And I know a lot of actors think that is not the best way to go, but I do think you would need this the next years, for perhaps 5 or 7 years before the market is more mature. And then also you need a more supportive regulation, making it more clear what can be done and what cannot be done. What kind of pricing is the correct pricing? So I think one core issue to be able to be customer oriented is really to make a good business case for the flexibility service provider. Next slide. So here you have more information on the coordinate project, and if you also press Stockholm Flex on Google, you will find some information also on Stockholm Flex. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for your presentation, which is very nice because now we can indeed move on to the questions, and there have been quite a few. Unfortunately, I am afraid we will run a little over time. However, I promise that we will finish as soon as possible so everyone can have their deserved lunch break. But I would actually like to start with a few questions that have been posed, and the first one here, and I would possibly like to address it to Santiago as well, but of course everyone is welcome to comment on this and provide an answer as well, is in a future in which the sale of peer-to-peer energy spreads and becomes massive, how will system security be ensured? And there's also, in relation to this, a question about the different roles. So what's the role of DSOs in this, but also aggregators and TSOs? And I was thinking that maybe, Santiago, you could help out here. Thank you.
Yes, sure. Yes, this is an interesting question. You know that as it is stated in the clean energy package, one of the provisions is that, and I also can take another question, that TSOs and DSOs have to collaborate in the establishment of different, sorry, because my camera was, now it's on. It has to collaborate in the establishment of different network codes and also an implementation act. So data interoperability is definitely one of them, of these new provisions. And in this case, we are starting to work on the provisions and the rules for taking in mind or making sure that this information and this data sharing, if you want, in all of the different facilities, peer-to-peer or peer-to-company, company-to-peer, have the safety and all the conditions that are needed for a good communication and to improve the system that is being developed now. So, in my opinion, now we have presented several initiatives that already try to make it possible. But in my opinion, as said, the important feature will be the establishment of this network cores and implementation act that will establish the framework and the precise rules for development in a massive way of this kind of services.
Thank you very much, Santiago. There's one more question, namely on the access to real-time data, real-time consumption data. And here also, again, open question to everyone, but particularly Holger and also Santiago. Of course, this is linked also to the smart meter rollout. And Holger has already explained some of the challenges in Germany, but maybe you could indeed comment on that, how you see the rollout of smart meters and the provision of real-time data in your respective countries, but maybe also overall for Europe.
Yeah, it is. You can hear me, can't you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, because the video is not on yet. Smart meter rollout is so crucial. I mean, but we have learned a lot. So what we call pioneer countries, smart meter rollout, it's Sweden, it's Italy, and some other countries. There is no successful smart meter rollout yet. And I don't say this because I'm not a big fan of mandatory smart meter rollout, but it's a fact. We started with energy efficiency potential of smart meters. That is not true anymore. In Germany, we have a very special approach, that we use metering systems also for PV, for all prosumer assets to control, to get data and all that. That's all fine. But in the end, it's very easy. The benefits must outweigh the costs. And that is a big issue. And the key thing is, what do DSOs or service providers or others need for prosumer business cases? Do they need really high tech in the front end at prosumers' houses, or do they need the intelligence in the back office? Do they need 15 minutes values or what else? It is crucial, but it's not easy, and it is very risky to start smart meter rollouts on an unsure basis. And in Germany, we might be the next failed state regarding the rollout. Like in UK, it's a little bit a disaster. We need smart meters, no way, but there is not the smart meter. The smart meter in Spain costs €5 a year or 10. In Germany, it will cost 60 to 100 euros a year for a 7 kilowatt PV plant, or for a guy with a heat pump. This is crucial. It is, but I can't stand this argument anymore. We need smart meter for the energy transition. This is not enough. It is, we are somewhere else. We need them, but it is very complex, and we have to differentiate a lot. And I don't see any successful rollout in Europe so far. Even we need a successful rollout. That is key. We all agree on that, on demand response, demand side management, aggregators, virtual power plants, all this. But it is not easy, and it's not a surefire success. So, and DSOs, of course, play a important role in Germany. They are the responsible guys. But in a lot of DSOs in Germany, for them, digitalization is a threat, and it's not a business case. And maybe for 100 or 200 DSOs in Germany, it is an opportunity. But for hundreds of DSOs in Germany, it's a threat, and that's not good. So important question, but answers are difficult.
Thank you, Holger. Maybe before moving on to the
can I say something, Hanin?
Yes, of course, Santiago.
Just
please.
Briefly. Yeah, I know we run out of time, but briefly, from my experience in Spain and also other countries that we have rolled out 100% of, almost 100% of smart meters, I would say that the experience is excellent, and it's a not regret decision, because we now can see, we have been using smart meters for many years, and we can see now the benefits, not only for customers. You said that in Spain, the cost of a smart meter was very low. That's right. But this is exactly the reason why we are trying to work on a right framework for Europe now with the Data Interoperability Implementing Act, but also with the other network codes, and try to just establish a framework for other countries, but with the goal of making it easier for those countries like Germany, that it's difficult to find the cost-benefit analysis in the way that other countries have done before. I wouldn't go. I could, but I couldn't go further because I know we don't have time.
Thank you, Santiago. Indeed, with a view at the limited time, I suggest we move on to the concluding remarks now. I still wanted to ask one question, but maybe if the two final speakers find the opportunity to maybe react to this question in their final remarks, that could also be quite interesting. I was actually wondering what you would see as the biggest hurdle that we need to overcome to engage consumers in the energy transition, whether it's rather about a different set of policy instruments that's needed, regulation, lack of monetary incentives, or consumer awareness more generally. Maybe if you could address this indeed in your closing remarks. And With this, I would indeed pass on to Tiger O'Brien, who's Deputy Head of Unit B3 of the Directorate General for Energy at the European Commission. Thank you very much, Tiger, for joining us, and indeed the floor is yours.
Thank you, Henning. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for organizing such an interesting event. So I've been following this very closely over the last 2 hours after a little bit of technical trouble at the very beginning getting in. So first of all, I want to welcome the E.DSO produced this paper. Just the introduction alone, I read through the paper, but just even in the introduction, you get to see some of the very pertinent issues that came up on several occasions during today's talks. I mean, that the distribution network is the direct link between consumers and the energy system is actually the first sentence of the paper. And it's sort of been brought up twice. This whole move towards a flexible, decentralized energy system with active customers, the particular roles of DSOs as regulated entities, and I think this is something we'll come back to, that they have a particular role because they are regulated entities and they have as regulated monopolies or quasi-monopolies. And then finally, and this is something that came up and I was very happy to hear came up during the discussions today, was the role they need to take particular account of vulnerable consumers. Now, I also like the fact that you're able to put your paper, and this came up again several times today, with 6 key messages. It's always good for us in the Commission if we're able to have something that we can clearly refer to in simple form for a Commissioner or a Director General saying, this is what E.DSO think, or this is what whoever thinks. So I think we will, I suspect we will see this again. Secondly, and this is really important, thank you to all the speakers for such an interesting event and such an interesting series of presentations. It's a pity the questions inevitably were somewhat constrained. Everybody was constrained, but there was a lot of very interesting questions coming up in terms of how we do it, and a lot of very interesting challenges that came up during the course of the presentations, ideas I had. I mean, for example, the differences between the member states in terms of the structuring of DSOs and the different experiences they've had with, including of former member states, with the rollout of smart grids and how we think about that and what lessons we can learn as we take things forward in the future. Now, I had the advantage of going through the side pack already last night. I think it's good to have some idea about what you're going to be concluding about, but it didn't prepare me fully for all the interesting points that arose. I want to very much welcome the practical experiences that were set out today. I found that extremely useful when we engage consumers and citizens, and I want to highlight those 2 points because I think that is something that came forward. Are we engaging people as purely as consumers or as citizens as well, and which motivations or which of their intrinsic motivations are we looking at, and how do we tie them together? What does that mean for how we think about things? I was also very happy that the work some of the work was sponsored by Horizon 2020. Not that the work that wasn't directly supported that wasn't important. The reason I want to say that is because in a previous role, I worked in the Secretariat General when we were developing the Energy Union framework strategy and the strategy. And one of our big hopes now 5 years ago was that we could clearly link research, innovation and competitiveness with our wider energy and climate goals. And I think some of the work that we've seen today shows an example of that, of how research and innovation is very much linked to achieving our wider ambitions rather than just being a tool of liberalization in the narrow sense. Which brings us to the point that today, the Energy Union that we worked on then is embedded in an even bigger project. And I noted, I think it was Holger asked us not to get lost in the European Green Deal, but rather to focus on these other issues. I think there's no conflict there. I think the European Green Deal is a framing of the Energy Union and putting it in an even deeper context, but it doesn't undermine in any way the ambitions there, and particularly the ambitions of having a consumer and a citizen-centric change, and also of utilizing all the tools we have to meet the very ambitious targets that are being set in terms of climate action. So now the aim is to deliver on the European Green Deal. I'm sorry I can't go into the full detail in the time that's available on all the presentations. I just wanted to highlight that it was very useful. Now, what we're going to be doing is actually, now we're coming out, hopefully, of the whole COVID crisis. And the Commission has been clear that the twin ecological and digital transitions will be the key to relaunching the economy. And today, now, what we're seeing next is, in terms of the European Green Deal as well, is the energy system integration communication that the Commission will be adopting will also be a key part of taking forward the European Green Deal and realising the ambitions of the clean energy package. And in that sense, I think it was clear, and what came together from many contributors today was the fact that we are in a stage of implementation. And that means the implementation of the clean energy package. Now, the Clean Energy for All Europeans package has a very detailed new regulatory framework. And they also very clearly, and this was highlighted on several occasions, enable the active participation of consumers and having a very strong consumer protection framework. I think really we could say that this is a best in class. This is the gold standard of a regulatory framework for energy systems. But it's important that it's well put in. Well, now I want to highlight some issues here and that, and I really, Henning, tell me if I'm going on for too long. But just one point here is digitalization. Now this will be digitalization. The tools of the clean energy package will be clear to realizing digitalization of the energy system across the board. This is highlighted also, I think you will see when you read the energy system integration communication, which is coming out. We will need to operationalize all these provisions and digitalization, and we'll have to step up investments in smart grids and other areas. And this is what we will be focusing on in the coming years. And the second point, and this is very related, is the whole area of consumer protection. I don't want to go into too much detail on consumer protection, not because it's not important, but because I could be here for too long. But the key to ensuring that consumers are protected in the new world, as we develop new services, will be extremely important. The other point here that we have is the whole issue of empowering consumers. And here I want to relate it to something that we will see that will be interesting and a challenge as well as an opportunity for DSOs, will be the whole area of energy communities and people participating on the market in a different way through communities rather than just the classic that you've got network operators and suppliers, that we're going to see energy communities coming in to the game in a different way. And I think that's something I didn't hear so much today, but I'll be interested in seeing how that is developed. On energy vulnerable consumers, I just want to highlight something that the Commission takes its responsibilities serious in this way. And in the autumn, let's be careful about how you say it's Q3, Q4, because it's a change. But basically after the summer period, we will be coming forward with our guidance on energy poverty. And here, I think one thing I can say is it's clear that it will be linked to the renovation wave and the kind of actions that are being asked for here, which provides an opportunity across the board and not just for consumers. And will also be very much looking at structural solutions rather than patching the problem, looking at ways we can do it. And I think that's something where the work on delivering energy efficiency and engagement with DSOs will be important. So the final point here, now this is where we get to the very detailed work, the prosaic work. It was mentioned here, and I think it was Holger again who said it, who alluded to this potential tension between DSOs and TSOs in terms of who does what and what it is. I mean, I think it's clear that we need to move all of us, but not just TSOs and DSOs, but particularly DSOs and TSOs, together with a vision of how this operates as a single electricity system. We must be system orientated from now on and develop the regulatory framework in that regard from a system orientation perspective. It's also clear that there will be stronger links, for example, on things to do with balancing and so on, no matter what, between DSOs and TSOs. And here, and you will have seen, of course, our consultation on our priority areas for network codes. There are two important network codes in this area in terms of flexibility and in terms of interoperability. I think working on this detailed work, which will link into our wider framework on digitalization, which will link into our framework on consumer protection, is going to be extremely important. The input that we heard today, and I expect we'll hear more of it over the next year, more along these lines, will be very important. The engagement with stakeholders, and I can only welcome again the very informative and very useful discussions that we're here today, and the contribution of E.DSO in terms of producing this paper in a timely point. And something that we will, I'm sure, engage with more over the next weeks and months. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tiger, for these appreciative words, and indeed also very good to mention the network codes in this context and the implementing acts on data interoperability that will be developed, which indeed is very crucial and also relates to some of the questions that had previously been asked. I would then hand over the word to Peter Fermat, who is the chairman of E.DSO's policy committee, to deliver the concluding remarks of this webinar. And on my behalf, thanks everyone for joining this session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Henning. And well, it's my pleasure to conclude this seminar with some closing remarks, and I'll use 2 slides for that. I think looking back to the seminar under the title Leading Transition, Serving the Customer, we have seen some interesting conclusions that we can share at this point. And to start off with that, I think that we all understand that the energy system is evolving, and that also the customer expectation from the activities and the relationship with the DSO is changing. So I think both from the customer and the system, we as DSOs see an important driver to change our scope and vision. And I hope you have seen in this webinar that we have a lot of good ideas for that. We are happy to see that new legislation through the Clean Energy Package and other things on the way is facilitating that. We need legislation, although we know that sometimes legislation is lagging behind. We're happy to see that new provisions enable active customers, facilitate flexibility, and, for instance, involve energy communities. An important driver for all of this is digitization. I think we have seen a lot of examples also by the various testimonial speakers on what we need, and in our own examples in the report on in the area of smart meters, data sharing, automation. So we need digitization for better services, but I think we also need digitization, for instance, to introduce new tariff systems that, as an example, also were illustrated, will prevent congestion rather than solving it when it happens. So prevention and solving go hand in hand. And in all of this, I think you see that DSOs are moving away from the, well, if it is sometimes there, I think it is a little bit in the past already, the traditional notion of connection points. So it's a more client-oriented model. To us, the customer is in the center of the energy transition and should therefore be the center of our focal points for energy transition. And in my last slide, I would like to conclude that with the illustration also of the Citizens Energy Forum, that everyone should be included, no one should be left behind. And I think we as a DSO, we deliver essential services directly to the customer, in having new services and enabling them to participate, I would say to unlock consumer power to take part in the energy transition. But an important other service, of course, is that we independently facilitate the market to have new propositions for consumers that enable them to take part. And in that we do it, I think, from our own perspective and our own cost base that is in the package of our regular scheme of activities that is changing over time towards the customer-centric approach. So we're happy to see that the Green Deal is emerging, and it will stimulate the renovation agenda and hopefully a further uptake in electric vehicles and introducing more renewables. And in all of that, hopefully we have shown you today that DSOs are ready to play their part. We have a good strategy, we have a good vision, but all the more we have a very good pragmatic approach. And Henning, you asked me to include a little bit of your question in my concluding remark on what is the best, but also the most valuable suggestion to take a step forward. And I think it is in the area that was introduced by Professor Linda Steck, that if we show concrete actions, concrete possibilities for consumers to take part, I am very confident that they will really facilitate and accelerate their own participation in energy transition. So let's make it concrete and let's facilitate that through a very professional DSO approach to the energy transition. And with that, I hand over to you, Henning, to finalize this webinar.
Thank you, Peter. Indeed, thanks everyone for joining. There will be a number of events upcoming still this year. Please keep an eye on our website to stay updated. And yeah, we are looking forward to welcoming you again soon. Thanks for joining.
Thanks very much.